Welcome. This will be a 5-part series on Elin collectibles, namely cassettes and small medals, with a focus on the small medals themselves. When you start in Elin, you can either begin here, which is the alternative start, or you can begin here, which is the default. For the purposes of this first episode, we'll be using Meadow as our starting location to demonstrate the utility of these small medals. Today we'll be covering the Tinker's Camp, Yowyn, Palmia, Fortune Bell, as well as the Embassy, finally ending at Miral and Garrok's workshop, where you can spin these medals. Along the way, we'll be able to pick up 32 small medals to spin as we please. We're going to move fast because I don't like to waste time. If you're trying to follow along, pause at each step for confirmation. The descriptions in the message window will change with every sound cue. Each time we hit a new area, the small medal count will restart at 1 since there aren't numbers for them in the game. The cassettes, on the other hand, will use their track number as part of the description. If your Yowyn looks different, you might be visiting during the festival. This table is technically a counter. I might use this idea on my own base one day. In Palmia, I use karma reducing methods available to a new player. However, you can always teleport yourself, other objects, or people at your discretion. In Fortune Bell, the Yivlapedia says that there's a medal underneath a box in the snail room. I've checked that box on my version of modded Elin, and then for good measure, checked it on the fresh installed the latest build and found nothing. One content creator said he was framed after he had to murder nearby NPCs after being seen dismantling the box. Instead, I found a separate one behind the snail statue. The second most dangerous part of this is the trek to the workshop. Staying on the road can help you a little bit. Well, that could have been much worse, but I think it's a good representation of what you'll encounter on the journey. He restocks every 5 days. And the absolute definite early game purchase you should get here is the Zephyr's Wrath. That's the steam emitting claymore when it's unidentified. Another solid pick is the Dragon Slayer. We'll put that as a tier below. And then, if you really needed more weapons, the Axe and the Gunblade are a tier below that, but are very good still. And finally, for cost efficiency, this for 2 medals gets you damage per medal. It is better than the others ratio-wise, but as far as damage per turn goes, this does not match. So if you only had a few medals and maybe you couldn't find them all or whatever, this is okay. I would absolutely skip the other weapons such as the Polished Sword, the Sharp Kitchen Knife, and the White Fine Sword. Unless you absolutely 100% needed 3 more weapons. We did show up with 32 medals. If you needed 3 more medals and your strategy revolved around getting the ribbon, such as you wanted to hit Lumieste and get those medals, which requires lots of swimming or breathing underwater, which the ribbon will help you with, then you can get those extra 3 medals by going north of the Palmian Embassy for the 3 Truce Ground medals, and that'll get you your ribbon. They're unidentified when you buy them from the craftsman because you randomly get other properties. For this one, it will always have the lightning damage and lightning bolt, but it may have one of the sockets filled in, and in this case, we are also given the random property of increasing our skill of gun. For the Dragon Slayer, it'll always have massive damage to dragons and gods. In this case, we randomly received Negates Poison. For the Axe of Destruction, it'll always deliver critical hits and increase Lumberjack skill, and our random roll for this was Charisma +2. For the Gunlance, we randomly had nothing in the sockets, and Sustains Perception. Both Zephyr's Wrath and the Gunlance, you can randomly get something in it. Nothing in the sockets is something favorable to me because I'd rather not see a low-level item get used in it. If you want the weapon to free up its sockets, use a barrel processing machine and breaking powder. If you want the modification back at the expense of your weapon, go ahead and just disassemble your weapon, and you'll get your mod back. And finally, the Dragonbone Hammer. It'll always show up with mining skill, and for our random roll, we got magic capacity and sustains dexterity. And that concludes part 1 of the Small Medals Guide. Thank you very much for making it to the end. I'll see you next time. We covered the 30 small medals in Northwest North Tyrus.